I would like to call this meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board to order. The agenda is a little different tonight. We will be opening the public hearing on the Hudson Solar Sun Common application at 7 p.m. We were hoping to do our secret determination this evening. We are still waiting to get a sign-off from our engineer on the stormwater management drainage plan, and so we will not be taking that action tonight, although we will open the public hearing. We will have to continue the public hearing, and at 7 o'clock the planning board will have to decide how it wishes to do that. We've all received the minutes for the January 7th and January 22nd meetings. Do I have a motion to accept? Second? Any amendments or comments?
Just the 7th.
Just the 7th. Okay, forget about the 22nd. Just the 7th. That's a good comment. Okay, could I hear all in favor of approval of the 7th? Very good. As far as correspondence and announcements are concerned, I guess the only thing that's really happened recently is the town board did interview 5 people for the open seat on the Dutchess County Legislature representing our town in Clinton. And I believe on Wednesday, on the 6th, the town boards of Clinton and Rhinebeck will be meeting together, and they will be selecting someone to fill out the term, which will end on December 31st of this year. And all the applicants who have applied for that position have said that if they were appointed, they would run for the seat in the November election. Okay. We have also over what we're doing, and we're going to do this in the future, is we have sign-up sheets for the public hearings. One is the Charles Cutler and Kate Dvorkin over there. If you wish to speak to that, if you would sign on to that sign-up sheet. The other is for the Hudson Solar Sun Common public hearing at 7, and if you would sign up, we need your name and address, because we need it for the minutes, we need it for the record. So if you could do that, that would be very helpful.
Is sign up only for people who are going to speak?
Exactly. Only people who are going to speak on those particular applications. I would have the Jeffrey Baker referral. What Mr. Baker is applying for is a area variance to permit an existing structure on the property where he wishes to build another residential structure. The existing structure will become an accessory dwelling. What the ZBA application is for is the existing structure sits closer to the road than the house that he wishes to build, so he needs a special use permit to permit that, since in our zoning law, accessory dwelling use, accessory structures should not be closer to the road than the front of the house.
Michael?
Yes.
That microphone for you gives constant hum in the room. Why don't you try a different microphone and see if it goes away?
Move it back slightly.
Just back away from you.
Turn it from, or angle it.
How's
It's that
this?
big ball.
Is this better? Is this better?
Try that.
Thank you very much.
Try that one.
How's that? Is that better? Yeah, better?
Perfect from there.
Okay.
Okay, don't move.
Good for my house, right? So that's the situation with Mr. Baker. I don't think that there's anything terribly, I don't think there's anything terribly problematic with Mr. Baker's variance request. I don't know any discussion on this. Could I hear a motion then to approve our normal referral resolution to the ZBA that we find no planning issues with Mr. Baker's request, and we think that the ZBA should use their own thoughts and any public comment made at the public hearing they will have to make the determination as to whether to approve Mr. Baker's variance application.
So moved.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. And we're 1 minute away from our first public hearing this evening, which will be Charles Cutler and Kate Dvorkin. It is for a special use permit and site plan to construct a single-family house on Cedar Heights Road. Well, it kind of looks like it's in time. If they would like, if the applicant or the representative applicant would like to come up and present.
A little red one there. There we go. Want to blow it up? Flip it, please.
Good evening.
Rhinebeck, Mark.
Good evening, Mark Rubinski, representing Charles Cutler and Kate Borkin on a piece of property that they're proposing to purchase. It's located on the south side of Cedar Heights Road. The property size is approximately 27 acres. There is property is mainly wooded. There's a small area that is actually in pasture, as edge of the woods is right through here. Central Hudson has an easement on a power line that cuts almost through the middle of the property. There's also some Army Corps or town jurisdictional wetlands that are also located on our property. Those have been field delineated. There's one pocket right here that has been delineated, and then here, and then also along here. There's actually a drainage course that goes along here that is further identified. So the purpose of this application is just for construction of a single-family residence. And I'll just note one change to this application from the presentation at the last planning board meeting. At the last meeting, it was the intent of the applicant to have the driveway go through in this alignment through here. It was actually going through the woods, so the edge of the woods, as I said before, is right through here, like that. So what has now been proposed is and there was approximately 3/10 of an acre of disturbance within the wetland adjacent area with the roadway going through here. The application has been amended to minimize the amount of disturbance in the adjacent area. And the driveway now goes along the edge of the woods, and then you can see there's a small portion through here, which I've shaded, that represents minimal amount of disturbance to the wetland adjacent area. It's about 1/10 of an acre that it disturbs. And the reason for doing that is it was to obviously to minimize the amount of disturbance through here, but you can see that the roadway wraps around and stays along the edge of the woods. So it's trying to keep the roadway along the edge of the woods, and then the roadway then continues down, and this is a hill right here. So it drops down at the bottom of the hill to keep the roadway out of the view shed through here. So it drops down and then enters into there's a parking area and a garage. And then here's the main residence through here, and then also shown on this plan is the proposed location for the on-site wastewater disposal. This property is also currently under easement with Winnicke Land Trust, and there's an actual building envelope that was established by Winnicke, and it's where it was actually moved. And it was moved to the location where the house is proposed. What I also did was had interaction and contact with Winnicke Land Trust with regard to this revised site plan from the last meeting, and they have issued a letter of support with regard to the alignment and proposed improvements that are being shown on the plan. The only thing that remains would be application to the Dutchess County Department of Health for approval of individual water supply and sewage disposal. It's just a single-family residence, 4-bedroom design for single-family residence. And other than that, it's just approval from this board for site plan, special permit, and wetland disturbance in the adjacent area.
Mark, is the garage in front of the house? Is there a...
So yes, the garage is in the front of the house, but it is attached to the main residence. And in the garage is also a discussion with the town and also with the town's council. In that regard, there's actually an area above the garage that is a sleeping area or habitable space above the garage, so it's considered part of the residence.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for
Mark,
Mark?
question that's got really nothing to do with a whole lot, but just my own curiosity. You mentioned that this is going to have a pump system for the sewage.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, how problematic are they compared to gravity flow systems in general? I mean,
Well, it's a mechanical system,
yep.
so it'll require maintenance, and pump will have to be replaced at some point. But what was considered in the design and requirement for the health department is that the pumps, so it's gravity flow to a septic tank, and then from a septic tank to a pump station. So that pump station is designed to have 2 days worth of storage from the design flow.
Okay, so if there's a power outage, they're not.
Yeah, and more than likely, and that's, so there's 2 days worth of storage for wastewater there, but more than likely, most residents now have some type of, emergency backup with regards, how to generate it. And so that
One plan for here?
Unknown, so that's why the health department requires 2 days worth of storage. So it allows time to have someone come in and repair any mechanical systems that need repair.
Thank you.
Okay, I think the site visit was,
Yeah.
okay. Could you report?
Eric and I went separately before the snows fell. The amended plan is a much better plan than the original one. The penetration of the wetland buffer is actually part of the field. It's not taking down any trees. The little pocket wetland does not involve a stream. It probably is a vernal pool in springtime, and I think it's great to leave the trees there, protecting it. I think actually this is going to look better than plowing through the narrow band of trees there.
I concur. I think what you did there is perfect for our point of view, and also from your client's point of view, in that they don't have to rip down a lot of trees to get their driveway in. And also, the part that does encroach on the buffer is still at least about, I'd say, 5 feet above the wetland itself. So it's...
Yes, it is, yes. There'll be a small portion of fill through here because this is a saddle, so surface flow breaks this way and breaks this way. So there's actually a culvert pipe here to handle, to allow that surface runoff to continue through here and into the wetland.
it looks like a very good solution, man.
Excellent. I believe the CAD, is there a representative here who wishes to speak? In which case I will read their letter. Town of Rhinebeck Conservation Advisory Board, dear Chair and Planning Board members, the Conservation Advisory Board, upon review of the submitted site plan application, wetland permit, and amended site plan, this board finds there to be no significant impact to the environmental policies stated in Chapter 120 of the Town Zoning Code. Unfortunately, due to weather, a site visit was not completed by the CAD. This board recognizes and commends the applicant for adjusting the proposed driveway further from the woods and federal wetland. However, we do recommend that if any fill for the proposed driveway used, be clean fill, and if necessary, any plants if needed to be utilized along the proposed driveway disturbance area, that these plant species are appropriate and regulated species by the New York State DEC. These species can be found on the DEC's website. This board is also encourages during construction all excavated dirt is handled appropriately to prevent any unintended sedimentation. Additionally, all excavation and land moving equipment should not be stored near sensitive areas where stormwater could cause an unintended impact. Do I have other questions from members of the planning board at the moment? Yes, Jim.
Mark, I think it's just a technicality. I saw in the application, caught my eye, that there was a TBD next to the zoning compliance determination, but there's nothing there, right? That was just the initial.
Yeah, that was, so with this, I worked that out as the application progressed with regard to it was with regard to the garage, the attached to the, and that was it.
I believe I saw something from Winnicky that said they're cool with it too. Did I see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did. They submitted a letter today that Winnicky has reviewed the plan and it's acceptable.
Anyone in the public here to speak tonight on this application? Okay, what I'd like to do is hear a motion to close this public hearing. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I have a approval resolution. I will hit the high points. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Charles Cutler and Dvorkin for site plan approval, special use permit under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning, Section 12572 and Section 12567 respectively, and for a wetlands permit under Town Code Chapter 120 for construction of a single-family residence with major excavation at Cedar Heights Road within the Countryside RC5 zoning district. All is depicted or described in the application and site plan prepared by Mark Ruminski, PELS, dated November 26, 2018. We reaffirm the proposed action as a Type 2 under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon review of the submitted information, including reports from the planning board members and the CAB members, on their site visit to the project property, finds the proposed work is consistent with the objectives stated in Chapter 125 and 120. With respect to the wetlands permit, we find the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the requirements for wetland permits set forth in Town Code 120, and we grant the requested wetland permit conditional upon receipt of a special use permit and site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for a special use permit, finds proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards for special use permits set forth in Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12567, and grant the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of the site plan approval from the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, find proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, 12572. We approve the application inclusive of the site plan prepared by Mark Ruminski, PENLS, dated November 26, 2018, and we authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and or requirements within 6 calendar months of adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited site plan and the format numbers specified within Town Code Chapter 125, except as being modified to a lesser number by the chair. Sign off from the Dutchess County Department of Health on the proposed well and sewage disposal system, and payment of any outstanding fees and or reimbursable amounts due to the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of applications subject to this resolution. Could I hear a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Second.
Second. Any comment or questions? I'll poll the board. Eric?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Kathy? Woody?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
The next item is Pink Rose Properties LLC, 40 Morton Road. This is the initial presentation of an application for site plan and special use permit and wetland, landscaping improvements and terrace with reflecting pool. Mark?
What's that?
Which file would you like? It's like-
Can we start with the existing conditions? Right there, if you go to site plan combined for plotting, it would be, yeah, that's existing conditions. And then there's a second, so when you page down, will this go to the second sheet? Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So, first one, please. Good evening, Mark Ruminski, and actually also Howard Williams from Hollander, representing Pink Rose Properties. This parcel is located on the west side of Morton Road, and is a little more than 16 acres in size. I actually worked on this property several years ago. There's an existing single-family residence there, along with obviously driveway access to the structure. What you see in this portion right here here's the existing driveway coming in. It loops around, and here, excuse me, here's the existing residence. A garage located here, and shown here are the wastewater, approved wastewater improvements. There's an existing pond, it's man-made pond. It was actually excavated and lined with an outlet structure, goes to here. There's a existing pool house, pool, and patio located here with a retaining wall and some fencing around, located around that. The property is primarily wooded. This is all heavy woods through here, along with both on the to the north and to the south sides. A railroad here in the Hudson River is located to the west of the property. Jim, if you could switch to the second sheet. And I'll briefly outline what's being proposed. It's essentially some improvements to the building and some landscaping that's also being proposed on the site. I'll just discuss it, generally discuss it, and then Howard Williams will be able to provide some more details with regard to the improvements that are being proposed. So it's there's a labyrinth with a gravel walkway and some landscaping, regrading for mowed paths and some landscaping associated with that. An outdoor terrace and reflecting pool is going to be located through here. Dry riverbed with wood footbridge and additional landscaping. A terrace expansion, fire pit, some expansion and natural stone edging around the pond, and general landscaping and regrading through the property through here. As I said, Howard will get into more of the details related to that. Since these improvements, so I handled, although this pond was naturally created, so as I said before, it's a lined pond, I still treated it as a wetland. And therefore, as part of this application, so it's application for site plan, special permit, a couple items related to special permit. Obviously, its proximity to the Hudson River is one special permit requirement. I included major excavation as another special permit requirement. Excuse me. And then I also listed work within the adjacent area of a wetland. Once again, I guess I'm still questioning whether this is, once again, this was man-made and it's a lined pond. But I'm still addressing that and making that application. We crafted the application under that premise that it's a wet thing. And so you can see here, site improvements here, and associated with the pool. Labyrinth is located up here, outside of that adjacent area. But I think what I'll do is I'll have Howard explain in detail some of those improvements, and then we can answer any questions that our board has.
Yeah, you go to the problem. Zoom in a little bit. All of the work proposed for this this property is in the rear of the house. At the front facade of the house is here. Everything is happening from that front facade back. It includes primarily an expansion. There's an existing bluestone terrace behind the great room of the house. We are expanding that in both directions on either side to include a fire pit on the north side, a reflecting pool immediately off of the great room, and then a dining terrace off of their existing kitchen. All of that is just pavers on grade, an existing grade, so no changes really there grade-wise. But this area back here currently is a drop-off of about 12 feet from the level of the main house down towards the pond. When the house was built, it seems like a lot of the debris of the excavations was simply pushed over into this area here and not filled with topsoil, not landscaped in any way. It's currently overgrown with a mishmash of things that have just come in invasively. So this is since the entire rear of the house faces this, our plan is to clean all of that out, get the overgrowth cleaned out, come in with more topsoil and fill, since it's all it's all really mostly rocky kind of infertile soils, and actually build up something that we can plant on. So that's where the major excavation component comes in that Mark was talking about. So it's really to create a habitat that we can actually get something planted on. So that would be just a series of open terraces. Fortunately, this particular PDF shows this a little bit dark. These are really simply just tall grass meadow areas that are in the dark patches, and then lawn paths running through it. This particular portion here would have, and it's a little hard to see in this photograph here, this is another project we had done, but similar, of grass spreads and stone risers, so you can actually create a more of a natural staircase coming down towards the pool area, or to the pond area. The pond we are planning on expanding a bit. The initial request by our client was to line it in stone, and this is really just talking about a cobble type of stone lining around the existing pool in order to hide the liner, which is somewhat exposed at different points. But there are some problems with the existing liner. There are bubbles forming in it that are actually rising up to the surface, so we've got some problem with water getting underneath the liner. If we're going to go in there and repair and clean all of that, we'd like to expand the pond a bit. And the reason for that is really just purely aesthetic. This is the great room of the house with a wall of windows on this side, and its axis comes right out, currently looking exactly on the edge of the pond, and it's one of those things that bothers you. You just want to push it out a little bit to sort of encapsulate your view from the great room. So pushing out the pond by about 15 feet to the north is part of the plan. And then lining all of that then with this cobblestone. Coming from this southern side of the pond, just a faux riverbed. This is just a dry riverbed of stone, like a Mexican pebble kind of so just to mimic a kind of a natural overflow to this pond, but it will not actually act as an overflow. It will never have water. We need to bridge that with a small wooden bridge to get to the existing gates of the pool, which will the pool and all of the fence itself will remain as is, as will the pool house. Our client has just requested to expand the existing pool terrace by 12 feet or so on the western side. Since it only has seating now, currently on both ends, they'd like to have seating on that side as well. The stone from that, by the way, is actually simply going to be reclaimed by taking the existing terrace that's at the back of the house now and reusing it over in this area. They requested a fire pit, then just a small round circular fire pit with a few paving stones around that, and then a small natural paving stone dining terrace just in this corner overlooking the river. And could we just scroll up just a little bit to see the top of the page? Yeah, this here is the labyrinth. This is just a small gravel paths, about 18 inches wide or so, spiraling around it here. And the purpose of the labyrinth is a form of meditation. So that would simply just be planted with a few ground covers in between the sections of path and a few trees around its side. Happy to answer any questions.
Quick, just out of curiosity, how deep is the pond?
We don't know exactly, do we?
I think it's around 7 feet deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Michael, is a line pond specifically not a wetland?
That's a very good question. And I think it's a good, I was just looking through the wetland law, and I think as a regulated act, there would be drainage or grading, something like that, to try and prepare working wetland as a regulated act, as opposed to actually trying to construct a wetland. I would have to look on a map. The Army Corps has mapped an awful lot of open water ponds and things like that as wetlands now, which before we did not consider this so. And a number of stream corridors they've also mapped as wetlands, whereas I think in some cases our stream protection ordinance is better than a wetland ordinance for a stream.
This actually, so not to interrupt, but so on parcel access, this does not show up.
As a wetland.
No, and so
I'm not
Yes.
a scientist, but I would be shocked if this has the kind of hydric soils that you need for a wetland.
Which is
I
why
mean,
the
given
line is there.
the description of the pond.
Right, and it was my understanding in developing parcel access, so they went to the NWI National Wetland Inventory and used the wetlands that are identified either by on the NWI website or the New York State DEC website.
And this one was not there.
That's not there.
Okay, because a line, it's obviously not a natural phenomenon,
Yeah.
it's obviously not gonna have that.
However, you said that there was water bubbling up from underneath
Yeah.
as well, so.
Yeah, so there's,
It's a low point in the area, it's
Right.
naturally going to have something
Right,
flowing
right,
in
so
that
there's,
direction.
there are obviously some, groundwater issues, and, typically what needs a line, when a liner's installed, there's a relief valve in the bottom that's welded into the bottom of the liner. Maybe it's not functioning properly, there may be an issue there. So it is in need of repair.
But I have a question. Did you mention, Mark, that the pond does have a spillway?
It has all it has is an outlet structure. So it utilizes what's, I use them quite often. They're produced by a company, or manufactured by Agridrain, and what it allows that is there's an inlet to this structure, and then inside the structure you have the ability to change the water level of the pond, right? And so there's a weir inside that, and then there's an outlet structure. So obviously there's surface water that, from the drainage area. So that's all that this outlet structure does.
Where does this drain?
What does it spill
I'm
into?
sorry.
That's my question.
Yeah, I put, there's
It's
a,
down.
yeah, right down to, there's a stream that a water course, I don't think that's defined either, but a drainage path that goes to the south.
Yeah, it currently, the inlet for it, it's here and it's piped.
If you look on,
Underground.
you can see that with the topography on my plan, you can
Right,
see
but
that.
the question I'm trying to get at is, in a heavy rain, the water rises, and then it spills into what you call the waterway or a little drainage.
Right.
Yeah. So does that then tend more toward the wetland sort of definition?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, it could just be, for example, at the gardens, they have all those water retention, both for stormwater retention as well as for ornamental use. But if over time, very often things of that sort do become considered wetlands, the vegetation comes in, types of animals live there, things like that, and they are classified as wetlands. I've never come across a lined artificial pond. Well, it's like a swimming pool. It's, you have a swimming pool, it's not a wetland, or we have to get a permit to fix it when it leaks. I don't, my own personal view would be this is not a wetland.
Yeah, I'll also point out that it's currently all lawn, entirely encircling.
Well, that could be, but still wetlands can have lawn, but, John, you were going to...
I was just going to suggest that you can, so Mark's taken the conservative approach and listed this, included the application for the permit
Yes.
on there, and I think it can be, if you decide the rest of the application is complete, you can accept the application tonight, and then we'll take a look at the Rhinebeck definition of wetlands and compare that to the facts that we know and figure out if that permit isn't required, we can drop that out.
Because it's not a case of you're not applying for something you should apply for, it's a case of you may be applying for something you don't have to. So I don't see a reason why we hold this up and accepting the application for further processing. Other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, this pipe that comes through, this runs under your dry riverbed
It's
or to the
I don't
opposite
know
side?
exactly where it is, it's adjacent nearby.
So it wouldn't overflow to the point where your dry riverbed would be wet?
No, we won't. We're going to maintain the existing edge all the way around the pool, so that's always going to be much higher than this outlet that Mark was describing.
Sharon, you had a question?
Yes, so all the work's going to be done in front of the house, is that right?
Well, the rear of the house, the rear of the house.
Towards the river?
Towards the
Yes.
And so nothing will be done between the house and Morton Road.
Correct. That
Okay.
stays as is.
Okay, and so the disturbances, because my concern here is this whole little section of road on that riverside is loaded with vernal pools, and it's a major amphibian crossing in the spring.
Yeah.
And so I just want to make sure that any vernal pools will be protected.
They will be, and we're not, we're working all in an area that has been disturbed and developed. And basically, like, especially the slope that constitutes the majority of it, that was all, that's just, was a rock excavation from the foundation. And so that's just providing a better stabilized situation for that. And then, as Howard also mentioned, the rest of it is lawn and graded. So there are no vernal pools located.
Yeah, I mean, there may well be, I mean, just to be in scale, I mean, this door jam is probably not even Morton Road in scale of the rest of this run. There's a lot of territory between our work.
And there are some pockets between, if you go to the east here, from the east of this house, there are some pockets of wetland areas that are between the east side of the house and Morton Road. And there's no disturbances proposed anywhere.
It's just that I do the amphibian crossing the road in March.
Right.
And, that particular, we just start at one end and go up, and we walk back down, and we walk back up, and all we do is move salamanders from one side to the other, this side to that side, this side to that side, and that's a major area.
It could be in Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
Mark, I may be confusing this with another property, but was there some discussion about changing the courtyard or the drive in front of the house?
We had initially, when we did our pre-application,
Right.
the owners, for various reasons, chose not to do that work in the front facade of the house, so the work then in the landscape is
So I
not
was
necessary.
remembering the right.
You were
Correct.
Any other questions, members of the board?
Yeah, I have a simple question. What do you consider the source of water for this pond?
There's a well currently
Yeah.
located right here,
Right.
and this is the in.
So it's manually got to be filled, it's not a natural stream that comes up
No, it
somewhere?
requires that well to
Yeah.
fill that level.
So I can't consider, I can't imagine if they're filling it, that it could be considered a water that we should be concerned about.
Anything else? Yes.
Really quickly, Mark, again, I saw in the application, TBD for zoning compliance determination, I assume we're fine on that again?
Yes.
On there? Okay.
Yes. I can correct that.
Okay, the only other thing I saw in the plans, you're proposing a number of lights, it looks like outside in the patio area.
Yes.
If you could provide a cut sheet of what they're proposing or something, because again, this light, maybe I missed it.
There is, it's actually,
We're representing the architect for that
So, on
portion of
the last
the
sheet, on the last sheet of the architecturals,
Is it in there? Okay.
yeah, it lists all of the, I can get individual cut sheets for those if
I
you
was looking at the code, it just talks about making sure we have, down lighting and dark sky. and-
Those particular lights, those are, you'll see there are actually quite a few that line this terrace on the outside. Those are all that type that are there, just a shallow disc. If this is your paving surface, it just rises up in an arc like this, and it has a small LED which just casts light across the surface of the stone. There's no uplighting, it's all.
Yeah, I noted the charts in there, I just didn't see anything that kind
Yeah.
of showed it.
I can provide more information, and they're all like 12 watts, 4 watts,
Yeah, I know
8
they're-
watts. 4 watts, they're all, fairly, minimal lighting.
Is the house visible from the river?
Yes.
Yeah, it's screened by trees, it's not fully open.
Haven't been on the river, but
Well, can you see the river from the house?
Oh, yeah, well, from the house. But I don't know where, I don't know what where the window that you can see, and I'm assuming from the river you can see back in, but you can also, from the pool area, you're looking right at the river also.
All right, anything else? We have a procedural resolution? Okay. Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Pink Rose Properties for site plan approval, special use permit, and wetland permit. We accept the applications and supporting documents as adequate for initiating review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. We are classifying the proposed action as type 2 under seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. We will schedule a public hearing on February 19th at 6:35. And direct the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause the noticing, posting thereof in accordance with the requirements set forth under Town Code Chapter 125. I think we'll delegate members Kathy and Melody to conduct the site visit.
What was the date again, Michael?
It will be
March 4th.
Oh, March 4th. It was not time for the,
Gives us more time for site visit.
right. March 4th at 6:35. Thank you. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board, we are referring the application to the Waterfront Advisory Committee for review and written comment concerning environmental factors as well as compliance with our LWRP. In accordance with the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, 239, Planning and Zoning, we refer the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for review. And we authorize without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise based on both the above cited field visit and referrals, preparation of a working draft of the approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on March 4th or as may be later timely. Could I hear a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
If you all will talk with Melody and Kathy about the site visit.
Great, thank you.
Alrighty, our next presentation is Jennifer Leff and Jill Hill, 64 Upper Hook Road. This is for a site plan addition to an existing home in the historic district.
Is that the new result?
I got the digital files if you want.
Oh, you got all the files there.
Just tell me what you want.
It's becoming redundant again. Not quite. But getting
Good
there.
transition.
Okay. The owners are here. That's useful. I don't know that I got you guys got the final certified, I'm authorized to represent. Let's see. You have our drawings there.
I'll let them go. They have a plan on the track.
Looks like somebody, there they are. Okay. Hard to read the text there, but, okay, so there's an existing 2-story, 3-bedroom house. I can, we'll get to the elevation soon, you can see what it looks like, so. So here, the existing 3-bedroom house, here's the proposed addition. So the 684 square foot single-story addition does not add any bedrooms. It's on the back side of the house. It's a full bath for, accessibility for first floor use instead of having to go to the second floor. In the spirit of universal design with some practical realities driving that with people in their life, and a laundry room and a 3-season room. So that's the essence of the project. We're not in any buffers or setbacks from wetlands. We're farther from the road than the pre-existing non-conforming house, which is 60-some feet from 69 foot 8 is the existing front of the house, and the closest point of the addition is 90 feet 9 inches, so it's further back, but. And that's the Ag District, RA10 zone. That's the summary.
Was there anything else you wanted, any other?
Things to point out? Oh, maybe drawings. We might want to look at the elevations, if you can go through the sheets here. Same file? Yeah, but if we can just go through the different pages. There it goes.
floor plans, as you may be interested, but actually the next sheet, well, since I was talking about the layout, I'll just real quick, you can scroll up a little, I'm sorry.
Proposed three-season room, laundry, full bath, just the transitional space here, and this is the existing. So the road's down here.
Yeah, but the next sheet, yeah, here are the elevations.
Do you know offhand when this house was built? I know we discussed this.
1885.
1885, so it is an historic structure. Okay, thank you. Okay, questions by members of the planning board?
Which 3 seasons?
Which 3 seasons? Good question.
Fall, winter, and spring, of course.
Right, depends on which season gets more extreme.
Anything else? All right, I have a agenda, anything you want to do?
Well, there were two minor comments. I believe you filled out an ag data statement, I just didn't see a copy.
Okay.
Maybe I just didn't get it, but just make sure we have that on file.
Yeah.
And then a similar comment to the previous applicant, just if we could see if you have any idea of what the lights would look like that you're proposing, to make sure they're down lighting and consistent with
Specific lighting, yeah.
just a cut sheet or something that what it's proposed to do.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have a resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby as follows on the application by Jennifer Leff and Jill Hill for site plan review and approval under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning at 64 Upper Hook Road. We accept the application and supporting documents as adequate for initiating review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. We're classifying the proposed action as type 2 under seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is concluded. Scheduling the public hearing on March 4th at 6:40 and direct the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause the notice and posting thereof. Who would like to go to 64 Upper Hook Road?
I'll go.
Edna and Sharon? To conduct a field visit to the project site and report the observations to the town public hearing. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board, refer the application to the CAB for review and written comment concerning environmental matters, and we're referring to the WAC for a review and comment concerning matters dealing with our LWRP. In accordance with the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, 239, we're referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for review, and we will authorize without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise based on both the above-cited field visit and referral, preparation of a working draft of an approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on March 4th or as may be later timely. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Very good. Okay, what you guys want to do is get in touch with Sharon and Edna about the site visit, and I'll set that up for you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our final item for tonight is a public hearing on the Sun Common Sherrod Solar Farm application. This evening, and Sharon is going to recuse herself and sit over there with our legal ground trust. This evening, one of the items we had on the agenda for tonight, in addition to the public hearing, was to make our determination of significance under seeker. We were still awaiting a sign-off from our engineer on the stormwater management plan, the drainage plan for this project. He has not signed off on it. I spoke with him today. He still has issues and questions, and he needs further work done. I spoke with the applicant, and I have been told that the applicant is indeed going to talk to his engineer and address that situation. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to speak to that point?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Irish for Sun Common. Yeah, Michael's correct. We received a letter this morning from Ray Drakowski with a few remaining relatively minor questions and comments. Our engineer, our hydrological engineer has been working directly with Ray, going back and forth. He has, I guess, a calculation change or correction he wants, some drawing amendments, and then I think they look relatively minor, but we're not able to complete the drawing changes and get his agreement before this meeting. So we'll continue to work on that. And other than that, I have no new information to offer, but I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the planning board? Eric, do you want to, would you like to wait until?
I'd be happy to read it, but I don't have a copy of my printer.
I believe I can accommodate you.
Thank you. I just wanted to read this into the record before we voted. This is a letter from me from February 3rd. Can you hear this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm writing because we are approaching our final vote on the Wartenberg Road solar project. We have deliberated long and hard, some would say ad nauseum, about many aspects of this project, and many important insights, understandings, and revisions of the original plan have been achieved. For that, I think we should be proud. We should also be pleased that, although not without contention, it has remained an open and civil undertaking. While I agree that most issues have been addressed, I think a couple of things have remained unaddressed or at least not properly clarified, and I want to take the opportunity to do so now. Firstly, Michael, I believe you said that the planning board is the proper arbiter for assessing the success of any mitigating measures, and I agree that that may be appropriate for most aspects of secret review. But determining whether assaults on the character of a neighborhood have been properly mitigated cannot be legitimately made without input from the neighborhood members themselves. But what I think is probably the most important yet unacknowledged issue is the ongoing legal appeal against the town's solar law. I understand that this issue is not in our purview to discuss as a planning board, and I realize that we've been instructed to proceed on this application regardless of the suit. But the fact that we are acting as if the suit is not happening and proceeding as if it has no consequences appears to be counterproductive to our role as planning board members in both upholding the zoning laws and protecting the interests of the people of Rhinebeck. Allowing the parties on one side to establish facts on the ground is outlawed in international territorial disputes, and it's certainly not a good way to settle disputes among neighbors and community members, as it automatically restricts the possible outcomes of any settlement in favor of one party and practically guarantees ongoing rancor and discord in the community. The essence of the suit appears to be that the methods used and the people involved in the fabrication of this law presents on its face the appearance of conflict of interest, and I've yet to find anyone who either disagrees with that or has been able to reasonably explain how it is not the case. Be that as it may, the fact that the law allows such commercial industrial projects in rural, residential, and even historic neighborhoods means that we, as a planning board, will continue to face the anger and dissatisfaction of neighbors, in this case 100% of the neighbors, wherever such projects are planned. If the law does not recognize a preference for placing community solar projects on previously built infrastructure and/or industrial commercially zoned properties, we will end up wearing out the planning board, impoverishing or eliminating potential solar vendors, and further eroding the public trust. None of those outcomes are desirable. We as a planning board have been put in a position of being required to make a decision which will inevitably increase controversy and diminish the public trust and tranquility. This is not a proper position for a planning board to be in. I ask the board to either postpone the final vote on this project or place a moratorium on any physical construction until after the resolution of the ongoing suit. And I implore the town board to rescind the solar law in order to recraft it in such a way as to remove the controversy it has created, or at least to put it out for a well-publicized public referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Just to clarify, the vote tonight we were going to have was on the determination of significance, not on an approval or disapproval of the plan itself.
Right.
But we're not doing that either tonight because we don't have a complete sign-off. Yes, we won't be doing that. We will be, after this evening, continuing this public hearing because we cannot close the public hearing until the secret process is complete, and we cannot complete the secret process at this time. So, having said that, we have a sign-up sheet over there who people would like to speak. We just need to make sure we have everyone's name and address for the minutes and for the record. But at this point, anyone who cares to speak tonight is welcome to do so. As I said, the public hearing will be continued again to a date that the planning board is going to have to determine. And I've been requesting if you can confine your remarks to things that we already have in the record, that would be appreciated.
Excuse me?
If you could confine your remarks to things that have not already been placed into the record that we're not already well aware of, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Dave Flipon, 340 Wurtenberg Road. Question, I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of the person that submitted that.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I do need clarification. Is there an ongoing lawsuit against the solar law?
The determination by the judge that upheld the town in that lawsuit about the manner in which the solar law was adopted has been on appeal, it's still under appeal.
Oh, on appeal. I
It's on
didn't know it
appeal,
was initially thrown out. But it is.
No, it's under appeal.
Thank you. And the public hearing will be continued. That's what I wanted to check. Regarding the decommissioning bond, that's still in place, correct? That's part of the requirement. There's a bond that needs to be floated for decommissioning.
Yes.
That's in place. Where is that? What's ultimately that referenced in? Is
It will be referenced in the approval resolution, all the different conditions of the approval, that will be one of them. The town board actually is the one who has to work on the bond. The planning board's not authorized to do that. That's something that the town board will have to participate in. Yes.
So there are two actions that the board has to take. The one that's being discussed about a possible vote tonight is on the environmental review. And then there'll be yet another decision that the board will have to make on site plan and special use permit. If the board decides to approve the project, then that would be dealt with, the bond would be dealt with as a condition to the second.
Automatically bundled in?
Yes.
Okay, as long as it's followed. I'm looking for the follow-through. Okay, thank you. The last public hearing, we discussed a requirement that the decommissioning plan take effect if the LLC fails. I was wondering if there's a status on that that's been added anywhere considered?
I don't know if that's something we'd have to talk with our attorney, if that's something we could require.
We're aware of those comments, and we're working on that issue. And what I can say is that the planning board will exert as much authority as it has within its jurisdiction. Okay, and there are limits to what the board can require. We touched upon that a little bit at the last public hearing. We were talking about the lease terms. The board's not empowered to step into the business affairs of the parties that have to do with the property.
Now, there will be an encounter, I guess, for example. I mean, if the LLC did fail or something, there's either in the review process, the review process, something that would come up.
The accountability ends up being with the fact that this approval runs with the property regardless of the ownership structure of who's there, okay? So whoever's there is going to have to comply with the requirements of the approval.
And that's coming back before the planning board.
Now, you shouldn't even have to come back. That's like you're not, if something happens that is in violation of the approval, that's the building department, the zoning enforcement officer go out there and issue a violation.
Okay, great, thank you.
But there will be reviews of the special use permit every 3 years, according to the zoning law.
Understood. All right, if future structures are built on adjacent properties in full view of the solar array, who is required to screen it? Is that the applicant meeting Sun Common?
I don't believe they are. I think they're required at the time of the application to take into account what screening needs to be done. We can't basically put on any
Screen against any
hypotheticals.
possibility.
I mean, hypotheticals is not something that we actually can deal with. We have to deal with what we have on the ground, what we know we have right now. I mean, if you look at what's happened in the town of Rhinebeck in the last 40 years, the fields used to be open, things like that, they're not. I mean, things do change, and we can't assume what might happen in any adjoining properties for anything outside the roads in the town.
Okay, I'm looking for clarification. So there's no subsequent screening requirements? Correct. It's at the time of. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Stephen, I assume this was going to be the last public hearing, so a couple of statements. So
we assume that too.
Okay. We'll come back with something else later. So I can read these. Thank you to the planning board for its ongoing consideration of our community concerns. We appreciate, meaning we, my wife and Jonna, she's away right now visiting family. We appreciate the thoughtfulness and bravery in debating the pros and cons of this application, and we respect any decisions made. But we understand that after all of this, we will still be neighbors, all in Rhinebeck. We believe this application has required serious review, and we feel lucky to have a board that is fairly engaged in its community. Thank you again for your service to Rhinebeck. So on one hand, allowing solar farms in rural areas could be considered sensible. And on the other hand, allowing solar power plants in rural residential communities can be seen as questionable at minimum. The solar law as written is not granular enough to distinguish. That responsibility is left to the planning board. The law in its permitting approval requirement, section 4, does state that solar plants will be permitted in all of these zones, subject to issuance of a solar energy system building permit and both authorization of a special use permit, which are going through, and grant of site plan approval by the planning board for the proposed solar power plant. So it's clear that the planning board is the firewall between appropriate and inappropriate implementation of the law. And I think this was a point of the debate at the January 22nd meeting. The planning board has done its due diligence by following established protocol. However, we feel there are other considerations. I do have a quick story. So I grew up in Holbrook, Long Island. I lived there most of the time for the last century. I've been in Rhinebeck for this century, the way I put it. And when I grew up with my brother and sister, we spent a lot of time outdoors, and we played in the woods out back and in the yard and across the street with the kids in the neighborhood, playing baseball and football in the lot. It was basically the community playground. And we had what seemed like an eternal childhood at that time. But one day we came home from school and the woods were gone. They were taken down and there was a housing community put up, and people need to live in houses. So it's understandable that's what happened. Outside my bedroom there was a crabapple tree, and that was gone, and there's now a low-income housing rental there. And then across the street in the lot, there are both another housing community to one side, and on the other side there is a often defunct strip mall with a parking area. And the historic pine trees down the street were taken down, and at the end of the block there is now a mile-long 24-hour electric rail yard. It's the Long Island Railroad's terminus for the Ronkonkoma main line. And they put up a wall probably this size, about a mile long, to block the visual aspect of the railroad, the electric yard. But everybody knows it's there. And just recently, a couple of years ago, because it was already there, the footprint was there, the Long Island Railroad doubled the capacity of the rail yard. So these are all obviously exaggerations of what could happen here, but the point is that one, I've seen change and I appreciate that. I'm proud of where I live. That has a rural aspect, an historic character that we're trying to sustain. We are stewarding our house. We may own it legally, but we are stewarding it for another generation. And what that leads to is that I believe that we should be sensitive about what we're giving up. It's very difficult to get back. It can be argued that by approving this application, and Rhinebeck would be giving up historic and rural character too freely, resources clearly cherished by its residents as identified in its comprehensive plan. And for example, if the application was approved, Phil Parati to the north has made it clear that his beautiful piece of property, which is set up for a home, he no longer sees the value in that, and that he would consider it, he would look to regain the value of the property back in any way, putting in rental properties or something like that. And that's what we look. We look, it is the farmland of the original house, which we own, and that's what we look at. And that's how community character changes. It's also where guests who come in for breakfast, they sit in our dining room and they look out onto that field. So that's one example. Also, 3 doors down past the Traver farmhouse is Edith Thomas's. She's got about 100+ acres of open land, which in the comprehensive plan, it's been identified as land that should be preserved. And that's all up for sale. And it would be attractive to a developer or others seeing that there is a power generating facility in the community. It basically says that it's acceptable that Rhinebeck would allow other things of that nature, and that's sort of part of the creep. It's a risk, and it's an uncertainty that we would have to live with. So anyway, to reinforce some of the points that have been said before, but to bring them up again, that Wurtemberg is a hamlet with a historic center, highlighted in the comprehensive plan as a candidate for a critical environmental area. Process that is underway and pending focus, and certainly something that's going to be continued no matter what the circumstances are here. The proposed facility is situated in this historic area, abutting to the northwest St. Paul's Lutheran Church and Parsonage on the State and National Register of Historic Places, has historic cemeteries pre-revolutionary war headstones. To the west are Pult's Farmhouse, dating to 1738, which is also on the National Estate Register. And to the north, the Karate property, which has an 18th century carriage barn with open fields. They were part of the Pult's Farmhouse that we're looking out onto. Abutting the church cemeteries, the Frost Farm, Barbara and Benson Frost were owners at one time. It's mid-18th century, mid-1800s barns. And just past that's the Traver Farmhouse owned by Met Nemitz. It's got a magnificent Dutch barn and adjacent preserved fields. He purchased a couple of fields adjacent to the church to preserve its view shed and the character of the hamlet. So some of the points, there's no study to evaluate the impact of property devaluation. There's no doubt that would have immediate impact. We can't say how much. That's certainly unknown, but it is something that can't be easily considered. The visually exposed fields on the Karate property risk screening, which is not true. I mean, I have to skip this point because it's been clarified that it's not necessary. Devaluation can lead to a domino effect, as described. The project isn't necessarily Rhinebeck for Rhinebeck. It's a Vermont company. This has evolved over time. It's there for Central Hudson users, not specifically for Rhinebeck users. It's also a foot in the door. Clearing-Württemberg is an industry-friendly location. It's much easier to change a law than to remove the solar panels. And as noted by Edith Thomas's fields, there is the potential for change there as well. We feel this would set poor precedents, declaring Rhinebeck open industry with extensive rural and historic resources. And we are a neighborhood. That's one thing. It is residential fields, rural fields, but we are a neighborhood and community. And this, as a commercial for-profit power generating facility being put into our neighborhood, it would leave us as the neighbors to live with the uncertainty. So thank you very much. God bless next time. Now, there's, Amanda's not here, but she did have a question. Do you want to bring that up, Jacqueline? I had, she was asking, she had brought up a point about the lease and the fact that community solar members can come and visit their panels twice a year, and then that bears on the issue of the special permit with relation to character of the neighborhood. And wondering if there was any status on that. Basically, she's saying that people can come in large groups twice a year, traffic and noise, etc. I thought that was the point, and if there was any consideration for mitigation on that.
I just have a question about the question.
Sure.
I'm wondering where, and maybe I missed it, the idea was that people would come in large groups. I didn't hear it. I mean, I thought someone could come upon request, but not necessarily that they would all be coming at the same time. Did I miss some?
That seems, I'm guessing that that's what she put forward, that was a possibility. I'm not sure if that's possible or not.
It's in the lease that there's like 2 days per year that would be set for the
And
members.
to the point, as a member, but as a group, that's the question, I believe.
Well,
If there's only 2 days set aside, we would have to.
I'd like to clear that up factually. Is there is it set in the lease that there are only 2 days a year that owners would be allowed, so you would then expect a large number of people on those 2 days? I want just the factual accuracy of that.
Yeah, the land lease allows for the owners of the panels to come on up to 2 days set in advance, so not just random at notice. For the purpose
Set
of...
in advance for the entire ownership population?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
as a whole.
For the purpose of them coming and seeing their panels. Our experience shows that it's a lot less exciting than we might think.
So they come once and never again?
We did this once before in a solar area where we had a solar farm nearby where we have 30 owners. About 7 or 8 showed up. Some of them showed up with their children, and they we give them black markers, so they write on the back of the panels for the betterment of the world and the planet and global warming and climate change and that kind of thing. And it's a little bit of a celebration. It lasts about an hour, and as I said, it's not the most exciting thing, and it's also not the area where the kind of thing where you necessarily want activities going on inside it. So we want to allow for that. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I mean, Dave has people coming and going 365 days a year at his business. Anybody on the church has people coming at least 52 days a year. You know, Amanda Miller could have a big party, 4th of July party or something too. If we do it, it will be during the daytime because there's no lighting at the facility, and it would probably be in the middle of the day and last an hour or two.
Question?
Thanks for the clarification.
About how many owners total do you expect to have?
I think probably about 60 or so, 60 to 70, given on what we're seeing with the other solar farms.
So what percentage you say shows up at the other one, approximately?
1/5. So we might get 12 people, 12.
And their families.
So you would have to take some management responsibility for vehicular access to the property and parking and traffic on any given day that was happening.
Yeah, there's.
I mean, because you don't have parking for
No,
60
no,
people.
there's certain.
Right.
Well, if we have, there's certainly parking for 20, 30 cars.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that the neighbor's concern would be parking along the
Well,
roadside and
Yeah,
so.
you can't park on Wordburg Road. I mean, it's very narrow where there's hills. I think would be kind of a dangerous thing to do.
Well,
They
so
would.
that was my point.
No,
You
we would have
to
them, we'd have them pull up onto the property. There's a grass, there's an existing grass strip that's about 40, 50 feet wide. Cars could pull to the side there, cars can pull up to where the existing garage is. There's a big flat level area there, so I think there's plenty of space for what we have in mind.
You're looking at me like I have an answer to this, I don't.
Okay, well, question, you know,
Yeah,
we drilled down.
yeah, thank you for clarifying. I mean, Amanda's in the city preparing to give birth, so I can't channel her, but I assume the question is, what is the status, and I'll report back that, I guess there's no mitigation against abuse of that policy, I guess that's the case.
Music to be provided by AC/DC.
I'd actually like that.
I think you can report that the issue was raised and discussed, and there certainly is, on my part, I don't know whether it's part of the approval, but on my part, there's an expectation that the owner, manager of the property would take into consideration the traffic and parking concerns that would be possible on those days.
And I think beyond that, I think the site plan has to show where this parking would take place.
Okay.
I think that's critically important. I mean, having visited the property, there are a lot of places you wouldn't want to try and park a vehicle. And I think it's critically important that if indeed this is going to be just like a Burger Hill. They had to put in parking, they had to put in the facilities to safely enter and leave the property and park their vehicles. And they've also identified an overflow area, which you've seen where they mow down below.
Stuart,
And I think that would be a minimal requirement on the site plan to show exactly where this can be safely handled and how many cars could be safely handled there, be able to maneuver. Some people might want to go out at some point, and they might not all want to go out together, so you have to have enough room to turn cars around and get back out onto the road. So I think that's an element that has to be shown in the site plan.
Well, and to piggyback on that a little bit, I think once they've been able to delineate the maximum available parking for this activity, you could reconsider the number, you could increase the number of days this happens and reduce the number of people that are allowed to come, so that you are spreading it out, but reducing, I mean, you say 2 days, but if you can't park theoretically all the vehicles that might want to come on those 2 days, then maybe you change your mathematics and you tell people it's on a first come, first served basis on these days, so that you're not exceeding the parking capacity at any time and putting a burden on the road.
That would be something that would be established before completion of the.
I'm just
site plan
suggesting
approval.
that go
Yes.
into the thinking of establishing the parking area.
Okay, thanks. And the continuation of the public hearing, assuming is March 4th?
We'll take that up.
We're about to discuss that.
This discussion, okay,
Yeah.
let everyone else speak now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make a, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the young lady was getting up to speak. Go ahead. Line is wider.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Murray. I'm an adjacent landowner at 361 Rhinebeck Road. So I wasn't able to make it to the workshop, but I did watch it on Panda, so thank you for that. So there were just a couple of comments and concerns I had after watching the workshop. There was a lot of discussion, obviously, about the character and all the studies that have been done that were proving that this won't affect community character. But I don't think character of a community is something that can be observed in, I don't think it's something that you can like show in a study. Like there's no study that says, oh, this is the character of this neighborhood. And I think as hard as you could try to define it on paper, it's just not possible. And it doesn't just rely on visual characteristics, it's a lot less tangible than that. And so things like the visual analysis relied on seeing it from adjacent properties, which is, I think, a good place to start. But if I'm driving down my road and I see through the trees these solar panels, that's affecting the community of, the neighborhood. If I'm walking my dog and I see like the high voltage warning signs, that has an effect on the character of the neighborhood. And just knowing that there's an industrial operation going on behind your home or in your neighborhood, that affects the character of the neighborhood. Just because these are solar panels doesn't mean it's not, creating lots of electricity. It's an electrical generating power plant. If it were something else industrial, like a factory, building something, I don't think it would be, I don't think you'd put it there. I think even with screening, you'd say it doesn't belong in this neighborhood. And I know that a lot of the discussion said, well, the solar law passed and, the solar arrays can go in any zoning district. So when I bought my property, like when you're buying a house, you're not just buying the house, you're buying the neighborhood. You're buying, you know what I mean? You're buying into the neighborhood, you're buying into the character of the neighborhood. And the zoning, what it's zoned for. So when I bought my house, I put the offer in March 2017. And I checked on parcel access. I knew that parcel was vacant. I looked it up. I knew Barry Sherrod owned it. I knew he was the highway superintendent of Rhinebeck, which actually made me feel good at the time because I was like, oh good, he won't put anything bad there or anything that's like out of character. I was wrong about that. But also at that time, the law didn't allow for a solar plant to go there. It didn't allow for an industrial use on that property. So I put my offer in March while the solar, the law was, I guess there was some public forums for the solar law, which was also brought up, I think, at the workshop that, oh, well, people should have spoke up about it then. And I think this is sort of like, kind of goes in line with what Eric was talking about. And that's that, I don't think, I watched some of them. I don't think anybody showed up to speak at those open public forums about the solar law. So to me, that's not it's not that the constituents were irresponsible in not showing up and not caring about their community. They just didn't realize how much of an effect and how much of a major zoning change this would be in all zoning districts. And I think had people known that and people been more aware, people would have been a lot more vocal about it. And I think that, I understand that you're the planning board and it's your job to look at that law and apply it. But when does there come a time where you say, oh, this is the first time we're applying this law, and there's all these problems, and a lot of people are very unhappy, something, like the law, something is not right in this law. Like when I'm at work and I know what my responsibilities are at work, but if my director gives me a new responsibility and something doesn't seem right, I don't just say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it this way. I go back and I say, this isn't working, I can't work on it with these parameters, something's not right. So, to what Eric was saying, I think that these problems are just going to keep coming up. I mean, you know, like just with this first one, the amount of people who are against it and unaware of the zoning change, as it were, I just think that it would be responsible. I don't know how much the planning board communicates with the town board and the legal avenue that you would have to take, but I think that somebody needs to really take a look at the solar law, because it is not, residents are not happy. And I think it's gonna happen again and again, because you're allowing industrial uses in residential, rural neighborhoods. They can go anywhere. So that's just another thing that I wanted to bring up. And also just like the scale of it, so it's like Wurtemberg, there's nothing of that scale in Wurtemberg. It's like an enormous plant. Everything else, we have historic properties on the National Historic Register, horse farms, like it's not the right place for it. And I think that the solar law definitely needs to be looked at before moving forward. There are some other things I was going to talk about because I thought it was going to be the last, but I'm going to try to keep it to the workshop comments. Dave brought this up, but the precedent that it sets is just pretty terrifying, because now, let's say it's approved, now we have a solar power plant in our neighborhood. So now when somebody goes and they apply for a special use permit for some other industrial use, this now becomes okay because now there's this power plant. So I feel like that also just needs to be looked in within the context of the law. And just, I guess this is another thing I would note. Well, I guess the property values thing, would that be a place to discuss it now, or is this not related to the workshop, like the seeker? Is it is that in that seeker?
If you have any ability to substantiate the impact, we've looked for that sort of information. New York State, there isn't anything in New York State because the solar power plants are a relatively new phenomenon. In other states, such as the Carolinas, things like that, studies have been done. And the results of those studies in those parts of the country is that it is not that big of a fact on adjoining property values in those areas.
But I don't know of any specific question in the EAFs that address that.
Well, I know it's part of the other approval, right?
I mean,
Because it's not supposed to have a
you
negative
should
impact on
make
property
whatever-
values.
Make whatever statements you have to say.
Okay, so just to reiterate, when I looked for a house, I specifically looked for something that was away from industry. That's why I purchased the house that I did. I did not want to be near industry. And Amanda Miller had actually contacted my real estate agent, who was serving as a dual agent for the seller. So he was representing the seller, she was representing the seller, and myself. Amanda contacted her and told her that this proposal was out there and asked that she get in touch with me and let me know this, because we weren't, we hadn't had the closing yet. She thought, oh, that's something a potential buyer would need to know. But I never found out about it. Like, my real estate agent never told me. Nobody ever said anything. So to me, that's like a clear indication, like nobody wanted me to know that this proposal was out there, because I can only imagine it would be because, oh, she might not want to buy that house anymore. And to be honest with you, I may have not wanted to buy that house anymore. And if I did, I definitely wouldn't have offered the amount that I did. So I think anytime you have a situation where you're decreasing the amount of the demand for a house, then it's just like supply and, it's supply and demand. If there's less demand, the price goes down. I mean, I don't think there's people who would seek out a house next to a solar power plant. But I definitely could see people who would not want to be near one. Another concern I just wanted to bring up again. Oh, I just wanted to bring up some unforeseen problems, and I did email these to you. Cypress Creek Renewables and Bluestone Solar put in a 2-megawatt system on 13 acres in Kingston, right across the bridge. And their neighbors are having lots of problems with property damage and flooding. And this was unforeseen. This was not, and now they're in this situation where like nobody knows who's responsible. Their properties are flooding, their houses are being damaged, but yet like nobody's taking care of it. So that's another thing that I have, and I appreciate the fact that the drainage studies being done, or like the stormwater runoff. But I was thinking tonight, and I was thinking, in the original application, I feel like that question's on the application, like, will this affect stormwater runoff? And I believe the applicant said, no, it won't. But yet now we're doing studies to show that it will. So does that have any effect? Like if an application states something like that isn't correct?
Very often we'll have applications come in, and as we do studies and look into it, we find new information.
Okay.
I mean, that happens with almost every application that comes before us.
Okay.
The problem is, or the issue is, that we then have to make sure that it does not become a problem. And that's what we're doing right now with the stormwater management and drainage plan that we're waiting for.
So if a drainage plan needs to be put in, does that mean obviously there's going to be more construction going on, more, there's going to, you know, right?
Not necessarily, it depends on what the plan entails.
Okay.
It could be a rain garden, it could be something as simple as that.
Okay. So, yeah, that's it. I guess just my final thing is that, you know, over 100 Wurtemberg residents, landowners, and worshipers from the church signed a petition against the solar power plant. And they don't feel it belongs in the neighborhood. And I feel that it will, the solar power plant will disrupt the historic, scenic, and rural character of our community. It's not in harmony with adjacent land uses. There are no other industrial land uses in our community. I believe it will hurt property values, even if studies say it won't. And I just don't think that the solar law is looking after the best interests of the residents of Rhinebeck. I think that it needs to be looked at, and I think that if it's not looked at, this is going to just keep on happening. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak tonight? Okay, we have a decision to make on exactly how we wish to continue the public hearing. The earliest we could continue it to would be March 4th, because we do require at least 2 weeks submission of any additional information on an ongoing application. On the other hand, we've been continuing the public hearing repeatedly, and we have not been getting the information that we need or require. So the other option is to continue the public hearing to a date to be determined, at which time, once we have the information, once Ray signs off on it, once we're sure, once our attorney says, yeah, this looks good, we would then reschedule the public hearing. It would have to be renoticed. So those are the 2 options, which I'm going to leave up to the board. And the first person to make a motion one way or the other gets to have the vote first.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you may make a comment.
So after a year and a half, we're down to changed numbers in one calculation. Add a minor drainage or runoff mitigation, something, small pond or depression or French drain or something like that, and make 4 changes to the drawings. So we're very close. So I would request that we, if March 4th is the earliest, then we can get the drawing changes made if we get a timely response from your engineer.
I think the thing that really concerns me is, once again, I did read Ray's letter. Under state statute, and John can certainly can correct me if I'm wrong, the flow, stormwater flow on a site post-construction can be no greater than it was pre-construction. It can be less, it cannot be greater. The report that was submitted and that Ray commented on showed that the post-construction flow at a number of sites on where this solar array is going to go were, in some cases, significantly greater than pre-construction. That's not a minor problem, that's a major problem. The stormwater control is an absolutely critical component of any site plan and any approved project. I do not see this as a minor problem, or if it were a minor problem after a year and a half, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it tonight. We are sitting here talking about it tonight because it has not been addressed. I do not know why the people you're working with don't recognize the fact that this planning board will not approve a project that does not meet the New York State. These are state requirements, not town of Rhinebeck requirements, not Dutchess County requirements. Did not make sure that the plan that they're being submitted to us, that Ray then looks at, does make sure that post-construction runoff is no greater than pre-construction runoff. It's not a minor question, and we've been asking for this repeatedly, and we're still not getting something that actually meets the state regulations. So I don't see this as a minor problem. I don't want to continue to schedule a public hearing like we did tonight, where people come out to speak about it, speak to us about it, and we sit here saying, well, we're going to have to continue it again because we cannot wind this up. I know many people may not like the decision we ultimately come to, whatever it is, but I think everyone would like it to end because I think everyone's probably pretty well sick and tired of having to come in here and do the same thing over and over again. So the one thing that will actually stop that from happening, one more public hearing only, is if we simply continue it to a date to be continued at some point after which we know that Ray has signed off on the stormwater management drainage plan. Our attorney has said, yes, we're ready to go, that the lease is in order such that we can approve it, that we're ready with a bond, different factors such as that, so that we just do this one more time. I'm sure the neighbors on Wurdenberg Road would appreciate that as much as I know we would. My own personal preference is we have a motion to that effect from Eric. I'll second that motion because I believe that's the appropriate thing to do at this time.
May I just, I don't know if it's an amendment to it or just a comment on it. I also want this further work to really be conducted between your representatives and Ray Jerkowski. There's just way too much back and forth with Michael and everybody else. This is an engineering technical problem that needs to be resolved. We don't need to be involved. I don't want to see it come back here until it is resolved, because we're taking up a lot of time, and with all due respect, the comments that we heard tonight, we have heard before, and I respect your right to keep saying them. Please understand, we have heard you. These aren't new comments, and we get exhausted. We just simply get exhausted. We're all exhausted, and I support Michael's desire that this not come back to us until it is done and dusted. So I don't know whether Eric wants to make the motion or we want to second the motion you just made, but
Yeah, I believe Eric
It's the
made the
same
motion. Yeah, Eric made the motion and I
Michael
seconded
seconded
it.
it.
other comments from anyone else on the board?
I think since we'd all like to see this come to fruition, whichever way it goes, I think we have to encourage, as the applicant just said, our engineer to resolve any concerns between he and his other technical parties and get it out of the way. It's too long.
Anything else? Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Then we will continue the public hearing to a date to be determined with 3 weeks' notice? 3 weeks' notice, because we do want to get it to Ray so that he can do a proper review of it. At that time, we will set the date, and there will be re-notification as there was when this began, and it began a long time ago.
Michael, I'd just like to make one comment. It has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but the applicant changed his 6 to 8 feet for deer fence around the site. I spent the weekend on Long Island and saw a lot of farms, and every farm has an 8-foot fence because they have such a deer problem. So I thank the applicant for doing that. I think it was the right thing to do.
I agree. Okay, with all that said, I don't believe there's anything else for this evening.
Amen. Woody?
Woody?
You caught him off guard.
But I don't think so, I think he's just being difficult.
There's nothing else to
There's
do.
nothing else to say.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you all very much. And thank you all also for your participation.